Sorry, I don't know. I had you muted, but for some reason it didn't start the recording.
Walk with me through the cellar door.
And I just talked through the intro. We're real professional here.
Walk with me through the cellar door.
A storm is coming, Fred says.
A portal to a more skeptical world.
Cellar Door Skeptics begins right now. Prepare for the revolution with your hosts, Christopher Tanner and Chris Hanna.
Welcome back to Cellar Door Skeptics. Thank you all for joining us through episodes 140. Yes, my friends, we have hit 140 episodes. I don't know how many episodes or how many years this is. I kind of been lost in this transcendent time frame, I think, as we continue to move through the static universe.
It's kind of a godless haze. I think we can call it that.
A godless haze. Yeah, maybe that's how that works. I think that's how that works.
I don't know. I think I was saying earlier, we were just bumming around here. I think I had like a 4-year Facebook anniversary, a bromancery, whatever you want to call it. I don't know. I was just like, aw.
I never got that. Facebook must hate me. It's like the algorithm. They're like, you say too many shitty things. We don't want you to. We don't want whatever you have to say. We don't want to know about.
You were
it.
Toilet swiping too fast. Just like,
like, oh, fuck this. You know, and it's kind of funny.
Sent me an official message. I'm gonna ignore that.
I don't look at Facebook as often. Like, you know, like I've been telling you, I don't. For me, the Facebook is not something I use as often as like Reddit now. I still can't go back to Twitter. I don't know. I've tried. I just can't get myself into it, and it just seems like a spam.
The good news is that Facebook and Twitter both saw losses in overall people added. The only thing that saw an increase in the last quarter was Instagram. So, like, we possibly reached peak social media. We may actually be seeing, like, kind of a leveling of the playing field. There might be some reduction and some kind of equalization and some normalization here. Hopefully, because a lot of the younger generations, a lot of people aren't interested in things like Facebook and Twitter because grandma and grandpa are on it. Like my cousin that was on our show, she was on the show for the high school LGBTQ alliances. She sent me a meme the other day, and she's like, me and you when we hang out. And it was Kevin Nealon in some show that he's in. He's eating a bowl of cereal, and he asks his like younger friend or family member or whatever, he's like, what's going on? And it's like teenager was like, I don't know, just rebelling against society. And Kevin Nealon was like, fuck yeah, stick it to the old people. And like, this is what she's saying about me. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm that guy. I'm the old guy who's telling the teenagers to like stick it to the old people. And I'm almost there. The gray hairs are sprouting.
Well, I've got gray hair in my beard, and that's probably my hair, but it's falling out, so I can't really see it. But that's okay. Gray hair is okay. So we've changed the show up a little bit. You know, some of it's been due to Hannah's time constraint. You've noticed we've cut a lot of our commercial side of it out. I don't know if that's better for us or not. So if you dislike, send me an email, send me an Instagram message.
If you want to do an advert on our page, let us know, and we'll add you in. So communicate with us like humans.
Exactly. So quick plugs for the show. You know, if you like what we do, you can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, anywhere you can catch your local podcaster. And we'd love for you to share us with your friends. So tonight we're going to do something a little different. We had a gentleman approach us. He has an upcoming podcast that is not technically out yet, but will be coming out within the next couple of weeks. The name of the podcast is called Mindful Skeptics. It is another local Michigan podcast, and so we thought, hey, why not share the love? He interviewed us. We'll be featured on his show at some point in the next 2 months. And so we thought, hey, we're already in studio with him. He drove all the way to Grand Rapids to hang out with us. Why not let him join our show? We'll give a little teaser, and then hopefully by the time his show gets up and running, it'll be a little bit of publicity for him.
It won't be as sweaty of a mess. We're here at my shop, and it's warm as heck in here because the AC doesn't come from the shop into the office without giant noisy fans. So we're just sweating here, just enjoying.
And the funny thing is, if you listen to his show, and I'll give you a little spoiler, you're going to hear me call him the wrong name at least once, if not twice. I had to ask him before the show. I felt bad because, we were recording, and it was just like one of those things. It was like, man, I'm pretty sure. And so then I just asked him, hey, what is your name? And he's like, it's Boyce. It's like a Rolls Royce. And I'm sitting here going, man, didn't I call you like Bryce or something like that? I think I called you Bryce at least once. Well, I think I cut myself out halfway through saying your name and just admitted it or omitted it just so that, I didn't have to feel stupid because I can't pronounce people's names worth two poops.
Well, welcome to the show, Boyce.
See, you did it again.
Oh, come on, that's what we got to do.
It's a quarter in the bucket.
Hey, there you go.
I'll be rich.
So, real quick, we are going to get into some current topics, but yes. Boyce, what's your show about, and how can people find you?
Well, it's the Mindful Skeptics. I believe it's a useful tool in my life to be mindful of my upbringing has predetermined how I react to certain things. So I've learned to be mindful and to be a better human being. I am not so angry. And I think it's helpful if other people can kind of be mindful of how they react to other stresses in their life and just not take life so seriously, because none of us get out of here alive. And I'm skeptical of everything. I think skepticism is healthy of any ideology. If it sounds too good to be true, it normally is. So I want to do this podcast because there's not enough of this in our area in Michigan. It's a very conservative side of the state I live on, too. Probably the most conservative area of the states in Southwest Michigan, I believe. And just to get more discussions about our local problems, because we all complain globally, but nobody acts locally. So I'm trying to get a little more of that local activism, hopefully in our area, and get Fred Upton out of office.
I would second getting Fred Upton out of office. I think we're all on the same page for that one.
He's been there long enough.
So, well, thank you. Thanks for joining the show tonight. Tonight's first topic, I thought that we would talk about, and we don't have to spend 20 hours talking about it. But I thought the first topic what we could talk about tonight was Trump's cancellation of the military party. Or military parade, I'm sorry. No, it's not a party.
It's his party.
And the funny thing is when I picked this topic, I'll be honest, I did not know you were ex-military. Mm-hmm. So this is a little bit of a treat because we get to actually ask somebody that has served the country. Mm-hmm. You do probably have similar political beliefs as we do, so chances are we'll probably all agree. But it is nice to be able to bring somebody in the room that has a similar, has an ability to give us an outtake on what it is. So originally they said last year the parade wouldn't cost more than $12 million originally. Now supposed estimates were up to $92 million.
Yep. 50 from the Pentagon and 42 from the Department of Defense, I believe it was, or something like that. Yeah, it's bad. It's real bad.
And so Trump canceled the parade. And there's a lot of discussions around, why he canceled it, right? I mean, we don't know all the behind-the-scenes politics, but the funny thing here is, right, is there's a gentleman named Muriel Bowser, and I just think of a Bowser from Mario. That's just how I see it. And he doesn't look anything like Bowser. If you can see his face,
he looks grumpy.
He looks grumpy, but he doesn't look like he's going to steal a princess.
Okay, so who's this guy?
So he is he is the District of Columbia, and he is the mayor.
Okay, so he's the mayor that basically stuck his finger right up Trump's nose.
Yes, and he's the one that Trump complained, and I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but he's the one that actually complained about Trump. The guy that's actually in the picture is Mick Mulvaney. He's the one. Yeah, he's the actual Office of Management and Budget Director.
You don't have to worry about the name thing. He's really he's good at just making those. Mick Mulvaney.
I don't know how to say that.
Mulvaney. He's a budget director, isn't he?
Yeah. Yes, that's who that picture is. So the other guy, the District of Columbia,
their mayor.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It's not her picture that's up there. Now she did go back and go after Trump, essentially, and essentially said you don't understand what the city's estimate is. And so the whole problem here is Trump basically said it's all your guys' fault for us not being able to have this parade.
Yeah, he blamed it entirely on DC for extravagant costs and saying that this would cost way too much. And this is the DC mayor saying, we're going to stick it to the Trump, anti-Trump, whatever. And that's essentially what his complaint is on that. And I mean, if you think about it, they had changed the initial plans from, heavy tanks and treads from rolling down the road to just essentially wheeled vehicles so that they wouldn't destroy the infrastructure, because let's face it, you get tread on concrete, you're going to break some stuff.
It's not meant to be on there.
But like in the end, it's like they just said that there's way too much going on. It's like if you look at like what Michigan does with the Belle Isle race, like the amount of stuff that you have to do prep for the roads to be perfect. Like DC is going to be shut down and it's going to destroy everything. So like they're saying that you don't understand the cost, and so Trump blaming DC for extravagant costs is essentially his misunderstanding of what the actual costs are for this. I mean, I really don't think he and anyone really understood exactly what they're asking for. But and to me personally, like this is just like our dear leader wants to have a party praising him. Like that's what this feels like. And so I guess to our friend here, former military, what does he think about some kind of a display of military power, much like the that Trump saw on Bastille Day in France?
When's the last time a president requested a parade?
I think it was
I don't know.
Nixon, maybe.
I'm young, so I have no idea.
I just have never heard of it. It sounds quite selfish and silly. I mean, who the hell asked for a parade in their honor? Seriously.
The biggest narcissist
Cheeto.
in the country, probably.
Exactly.
The narcissist. So this is what Trump said. He says local politicians who run Washington, D.C., in parentheses, he says poorly, know a windfall when they see it. When asked to give us a price for holding a great celebratory military parade, they wanted a number so ridiculously high that I had to cancel it. Never let someone hold you up. I will instead attend another big parade already scheduled at Andrews Air Force Base on a different date and go to the Paris parade and celebrating the end of the war on November 11th. Now, I'm sorry, but there's already 2 parades for what you wanted to do. Why in God's green earth are you even trying to do your own military parade?
His tweet there for the Andrews Air Force Base thing, it's not a parade, it's an air show.
Oh.
Yeah.
He called it a parade. He says right here, he says it's a parade.
I know. They were talking about it on NPR this morning. It's an air show.
It's an air parade.
Yeah, it's an air parade.
They're all the planes will fly in a line.
Right, so Donald
parade.
Trump, this is from Bustle. Donald Trump mused about the idea of the U.S. military parade, blah, blah, blah. And the last time the U.S. military parade happened, it was under President George H.W. Bush in 1991, nearly 30 years after the Gulf War victory parade. This is nearly 30 years after the Gulf War victory parade. So the last time they had one was to celebrate the Gulf War victory in 1991.
But not at the president's request.
Yeah, this wasn't just like, hey guys, I'm great, you should do this for me.
Right.
This was, the end of a conflict. It wasn't a war.
A pseudo celebration.
Yeah. So the United States hasn't been in an actual declared war since World War II. Vietnam, Korea, all that stuff, all were considered conflicts, including Desert Storm.
Yeah.
But
so the one thing so the mayor rebuts anything that Trump says. But before we get into anything like that, we even talk about it, and I don't even know if it's worth talking about because we all know he's
absurd.
Yeah, he's just it's ridiculous. Think about it this way. He's a GOP candidate, right? And let's take out the fact that it's 45. Let's remove him from the equation and just talk about the fact that this is a GOP candidate, right, that's complaining about some companies being opportunist is essentially what he's complaining about. Now, we all know that it's really not companies per se that are being opportunists. This is government functionality that's saying, hold on, do you understand how this will cost us due to failing infrastructure, police forces, all these other things, right? But you have a GOP candidate that believes in capitalism that when given the fact that companies could take advantage of this, he's claiming they are, and he's upset by that. What is wrong with you? This is what the GOP stands for. Blatant capitalism. For Christ's sake, what the fuck is going on here? Why are you complaining about it? Are you a socialist now? Do you want everybody to give you a free fucking military parade? I don't know.
But don't forget he ends it with, now we can buy more jet fighters. There's a little sugar on top there.
Yeah. Well, how much does a jet fighter cost?
Ooh,
$35 million a piece.
yeah.
Well, then he's not going to be able to buy that many. I mean, what's that? If he claimed 92 million, that's only 2 3/4 of a jet.
Those are just the basic old ones. I think those new F-35s are like $1 trillion $4 or something like that, or $1 billion $4. I think per. I mean, it's insane. Those are the most over budgeted airplane. I understand the necessity for having supremacy in the skies, but that was just a massive debacle when it came to getting that airplane out. And the same with the new carriers. They had the new what are those
Super
McCain
carriers.
super carriers or whatever.
Yeah. Super carriers.
Yeah, the ones that they couldn't. They couldn't.
Is that the ones that carry the other carriers? Like they have planes that pick them up and land them
like
on
the
them.
vending machine of carriers.
Yes, they hit a button and spits it out. The front opens and they all come out.
The vending machine of carriers. But here's my thing. You know how many times I've seen those jets go in the water?
I don't know. Tell us, I guess. I've never seen one, so.
It happens.
Quite
Let's just put it that way.
Yeah. It happens
It's
a lot.
not 100% landing
them?
rate. No.
In training missions.
The pilot ejects and it's jettisoned. It's done.
Ugh.
And it goes to the bottom and rusts away and goes to the soot like forever. There's that money. We drive our ships down to Roosevelt Roads, which is off of Puerto Rico, and we bomb the living shit out of that stupid little island. It's got a bunch of old tanks and cars as targets, and each SM-1 and SM-2 missile costs over $1 million a piece.
Yep.
And we're out there because we got to use them because they're going to go out of date.
It's the same
we need
thing.
to practice. I mean, $1 million.
It's the same thing as like you hear all these prisons.
It's like my retirement plan.
You hear all these prisons throughout the United States, and they're like, all of our expiration dates on our drugs are going bad. We got to use these things up, so let's speed up this process. And there's a whole bunch of people that are contesting the fact that people on death row are about to be put to death. They've been there for 20-something years, and they want to do like 18 people in 3 days because the drugs are about to expire, and they can't use them after that because legally you can't use them. And so they're trying to like just throw them through, a quick check lane, 12 items or less.
Just send them to Texas, man. They got a
it's
fast
the same
lane.
thing. It's like the missile's about to go out of its usable date. So we need to start a fight with some little place somewhere or whatever. I don't know. It's just a lot of these things that we could easily find some other use for.
We're the only country that has a defense budget that is
$717 billion just released like last week.
I can't remember what the percentage is of our gross national product, but it's a significant, like 40%.
I thought it was around 30, but it could be at the 40.
I know it's something like 60% for all of our untouchables. So like the Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, 60-70%, something like that. But like 30% of discretionary spending is military budget, and it's grown significantly because they're cutting from everything else to grow.
Yes, but we are the highest per capita, I believe it is, in budgets for military.
By
naturally.
multiple times over. I think it's an order of magnitude. Like 10, I think it's 10 times, or
like other countries are
10 next countries combined, or something like that.
10%, 12% is everybody else at the high end. We triple it, quadruple it, and we don't feel safe still. Jesus, we're scared of immigrants still.
Well, I mean, if you think about it,
across the border with no shoes on,
well,
let's build another fighter jet.
We're not attacking those people, but there's another thing here is that they were just talking about an audit with the Pentagon and something like $8 trillion disappearing and all that kind of budgeting stuff. There's some freaky stuff that's happening when it comes to military spending and contracting and whether or not these things are kept track of. We talk about people like the Cheney buddy boys who essentially profited from anything that's happened in the Middle East over the years. So I mean, that's not a question. I would love to see more in-depth analysis in the future on that. The only problem is a lot of times you talk about private corporations profiting from the American war machine. You start heading down the 911 truther hole.
We're definitely not going on that hole today.
And so, that's just really hard to find good information for that. So, like, one of the things you risk is if you're looking for this info, you need to be careful where you're looking.
Yeah, consider the source.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny. You were talking about the death penalty, right? And I don't know if you've seen you interviewed us, we were talking about Hulu versus Netflix, right? Mm-hmm. I have Hulu right now. I'm a big Stephen King fan. That's the one thing you didn't ask us was what's your favorite books, right? We didn't get into books.
Ooh. That's a good one.
Now you got to add it. Now you got to have
important.
like your 14
Ouch.
things.
Yes.
Yeah.
But it won't be a baker's dozen.
It won't
I
be.
have to re-stick that thing. I got to give it a new label.
There you go. But, either which way, so I'm a big Stephen King fan. Huge Stephen King. He was probably the first author, like real big author I ever read. And I do really like horror movies and different things like that. But, we were talking about this. They have this new series called Castle Rock where it's in the vein of Stephen King, right? Stephen King's an executive producer. They have all these other
Isn't it
things.
some of his short stories and stuff like that? Like it's just like the Stephen King universe, sort of, isn't it?
Kind of, yes. They make reference to things, but it's a completely new story. One of the main character on there actually works as a defense attorney in Texas, helping people on death row. So it's kind of funny you brought this up. They got to use these drugs to get these people through the system. The first episode, you actually see. Not that they had to use the drugs up, but you see like the process where they gone through all these appeals and like, well, and one day we haven't waited for this. If you guys don't stop this, in one day this person will be dead, blah blah blah, and then the person's dead, and then at the very end of that scene, all of a sudden he gets this alert and everybody's running back to where this alarm. So he flees. The defense attorney was there as her witness. He flees back to go see her. Shit, she came back to life. Here they are, like, closing the blinds, like, the drugs didn't work. Here they are, they didn't work. Which is, another thing why capital punishment is a ridiculous
Well, do you know
endeavor,
why
but-
in the actual capital punishment declaration of the law it says we'll hang until dead?
Until dead. 6 to 10 minutes.
Yeah, but do you know why it says it's hang until dead? There was a woman who was hung, and they said she was dead. They lowered her down, and like a half hour later, she came back to life, and she was set free because she wasn't hung until dead. She survived the execution, and they said, well, you've been executed. You're free to go. And she killed somebody, I think it was what it was. And they changed the law because she wasn't dead by the time they were done hanging her. Like, her neck didn't break when they did the hanging or whatever, because like a lot of times they do the long drop.
Yes.
And like that was the thing, man. I saw that not too long ago. I spent a lot of time. So one of the links that I threw in for a topic for this is Click If You Dare. So they had NPR does a lot of really good lists. And last year they did this greatest 100 songs by women in the history, and it was amazing, absolutely stunning. A lot of songs that I was not familiar with, a lot of that I was.
Was Sandra McLaughlin on there?
There was a ton of them. I mean, really.
I'm a big Sandra McLaughlin fan, weirdly. Sarah McLaughlin fan, weirdly enough.
Well, like whenever I hear stuff, I always think of like the Sad Puppies. I can't.
Yeah, that's the only thing I was thinking of.
I
Actually.
know. And then Lilith Fair, when they used to do that, like that was like Sarah McLaughlin. And anyways, but like they put out this list of 100 greatest short stories and horror stories. And it's awesome. A bunch of them that I don't know I'm going to be checking out, but I figured we could scroll through this list and pick some of our favorites. I just want to start right out of the gate. I've mentioned this on the show multiple times, but there's one, if you scroll down a little ways, it's called The Yellow Wallpaper. And it's a woman who was basically talking about her own personal experience. And it is probably the most terrifying trek into psychology that I've ever experienced. She is... this was back in the day when people were essentially a woman was excessive. She was wild. She was weird. They said, you're eccentric. You need to go rest. You need to go sit in your room and just relax, lady. And the husband would put his wife in there. And in this case, the husband's he was a doctor. Well, they put her up in the attic in this room, and she was having a psychological breakdown. There was this weird peeling yellow wallpaper on the wall.
Yeah.
And in the process of her breakdown, it starts to move, and the descriptions of it coming to life really is. It's a short story, quick and painless, unless you can catch some parallels to your own life. But it's, I mean, it was high school, and one of the women that was a teacher in my school, she was very, very influential in getting a lot of us good books as opposed to just recommended required reading. And this is one of the short stories we had to read, and she blew my freaking head off with this thing.
Yeah, that would be crazy. That's kind of one of those things where I'm sure if any of the parents had caught wind of that, especially in your school, they would have, it would have been a big thing.
Probably. I don't think a lot of people were that impacted by it because, let's face it, high school kids aren't very good at self-reflection and psychological analysis. Some of them are. I don't think I was that far advanced. Once I got to college, it really changed where I was as far as what I was aware of. But this story, just like some of the things from Jack London and some of that stuff, like this story, though, just... I don't know if I was just particularly aware reading it, but it caught me. The writing was understandable enough that, like I could be like, what are they doing to this woman? Like it wasn't like she's losing her mind. It's like they're making her, they're forcing her. And that was the thing. Like she was like, help me. I need out of here. I need help. I need to be away from this. And they were like, no, this is where you need to be. And they were putting her in a place of distress when she was distressed. And I just like imagined them forcing her mind to break. And it was one of those things that you don't realize what you're reading until you get older, and you think about or you hear about it again, and it just comes back, and you're just like, holy crap. I'm glad it's on this list, basically.
Yeah. I think you and I might have talked about this before.
Well, yeah,
I think this is, I've actually read that one, I think based on either yours or Keith's recommendations. And it's kind of funny because I grew up, like I said, reading Stephen King. And like in the beginning portion, like Stephen King's the largest one mentioned, the one they had the most votes for. And it's like, all right, so it's nice that they did a larger list so it's not all Stephen King because, they have Frankenstein and they have Dracula and, they have the Telltale Heart, right? These are classics, but, to me it would almost be better, hey, anything but Stephen King, right? Is it a great story? And if you would have asked us, boys, favorite books, Stephen King has one of my favorite books ever. So like I wouldn't be able to not say it. But for those people listening, there's so many other people out there. For example, they have Let the Right One In.
I have this one on my screen right now. This movie, I haven't read the book, but man, if it's as good as the movie or better, as they say it is.
And the book is amazing. I own the book. I've read the book. And there's two versions of the movies. They have a version, an American version, and they have a foreign version of this. And the book, the closest one to the book is the foreign version. Do not watch the American version. If you want it to be close to the
Grace
book.
does a decent job, but
it's a good movie.
The original. It's like the girl with the dragon tattoo.
Yes,
it's a copy of the original. It's not quite as good. But it's still, it's really is. It's a copy of the original, but the foreign one is better.
Yeah. Boyce, what books did you read growing up?
Honestly, none.
Oh, jeez.
Not away. On high school, the first book I ever read was Flowers for Algernon.
Dude, don't even mention that book. That makes me cry. It makes me
It's the
freaking
only
cry.
book I read in high school, cover to cover, because it was good. I hated.
Hey, say it again. I want to see Hannah cry.
Dude,
he's only cried like once on the show.
The end of that book just broke me in half. It broke me in half.
That's the only book I read that was assigned reading in high school. I always rented the movies. The what do you call those little the yellow books for dummies? Like Lord of the Flies. I rented the VHS tape. Then I read the book later, and I was like, I should have just read the book. It's a good book. But in high school, I didn't have time. I had a job. I was an athlete. Practice, life goes on.
Yeah.
But when I got in the military and got deployed, you had nothing but time. Then I took up reading books because it helped me sleep. Then my first book.
You could fall asleep reading a book? This is such an alien thing to me. I will read for like 7 hours until I'm like, okay, I have to put this book down.
It worked at first. Then I found out I'm losing sleep.
Okay.
So then I had to figure something else out. But yeah, my very first book I bought with my own personal money was The Green Mile.
Oh, wow.
At the airport in Jacksonville, Florida. Coming home on leave, and I had a 2-hour delay. And Stephen King had released those books in 6 mini books.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
And I was like, that's not intimidating. I can handle a mini book, like 200 pages or 100-something pages. So I bought 3 or 4 of those, and I killed a couple hours. I went through that book so fast. But then I got down to the last 2 books. It wasn't released yet, and I had to wait. I wasn't too happy about that.
Yeah. Another one that shows up in here is The Lottery. It was a short story. I don't know if you had to read that in high school or not. We had to read that in high school.
I did too. That one was a freak show. That's the stoning one, right?
Yes.
Yep.
Stoning?
Yeah. Essentially what they do is it's a town. Did you ever read The Giver?
Yes.
The Giver was like this like all-inclusive community.
Yes.
You know, the rules were
That's a
set.
good
The
book.
lottery was the same way. Essentially, this was like
No,
the perfect
it's
community.
different.
Well, kind of like it was like the perfect community. The society was created, the structure was created, and there was a lottery. And if you lost the lottery, they killed you. They stoned you to death. The town did.
Jesus.
And they did it on purpose. There's a reason they did it. In The Giver, it's different, though. The Giver
I know,
is a
I'm
lot
just talking
different.
like that. The future, like the story,
Yeah.
like society was created in a very structured.
The Giver is closer to trying to say we shouldn't have Marxist dictatorship, socialist ideologies inside of society because this is what happens.
Yeah.
The lottery is when you have the lottery. The way I see the lottery is completely different because I see the lottery as a story that talks to you about how if you believe something one-minded and you don't go outside. So when we were on your show, I was talking about. I guess I'm saying this before you. I'm giving your show away, damn it. But on the show we were talking about an experience I had with you don't listen to the band before on the same day you go see the concert. That's just like it's a thing you just don't do because bad things could happen. The lottery is essentially calling that out, that tradition should not be stayed the same. We should not just believe something just because that's what we've always been taught. And when we do, no matter how gruesome it is, and it shows you how people can literally look at something and turn a blind eye if the majority of 99% of the people aren't like that. And maybe this wasn't 100% intended to be like that, but if you think about it, if you live in a white majority nation, you don't look at the minorities being harmed as much. You don't look at those elections. I mean, people talk about how do we want to help poverty in the elections, but then they don't turn around and do anything because it's just not prominent. So then when we see movements like Me Too, like Black Lives Matter, those things to me are ultra inspiring because they're looking in the face of things that people talked about back in the fucking 40s and nobody did anything about. And they're sitting here saying, look at this. You guys want to think that, racism doesn't exist? Here you go. How many black people have been murdered by fucking cops in the last, 6 years that are now televised that before were not being televised? And it's all because we had one or two people stand up. It's not that they weren't being murdered before that. They sure as fuck were.
Right.
It just wasn't in our face.
Mm-hmm. Just one way to just blend this in, like Boyce, if you think about the lottery, it's that people don't really care about something really bad happening until it happens to them.
Bingo.
And you know what I mean? So like the whole idea is like this is better for society and this is better for all of us until it happens to you. And so like, I mean, this probably can bring into some of your religious ideology when you were brought up. It's like, these kinds of things aren't bad until, it's happening to you or someone in your family is,
Well, yeah, if you put it in religious context, is like some people believe that homosexuality is punishable by death.
Yeah.
In some religions. And you believe it with all your heart until it's your kid, or it's your sister, or it's your mother or father, or your best friend. Then you start to question it. You're like, wait a minute. I know they're good people. Now we're supposed to shun them or wish harm upon them or committed a physical harm to them. It's the same premise of, like you're saying, until it hits your home, then it's like exposure leads to tolerance,
or it should at least. But sometimes it doesn't even lead to tolerance. That's the thing. Is like my whole perspective on this is just that with the idea of the lottery is that you can look at someone who you completely love, and then if they are chosen to be the scapegoat. So the whole idea of most religion nowadays is that you are putting out some scapegoat to take your sins and cast upon whatever, and then vicarious redemption to me is a horrendous thing. But the whole idea of like the lottery is something like you would do something like that. You choose someone who is the scapegoat to symbolize all of the evils leaving the community, the whatever, and like, but you can also just completely. This is like double think. This is Orwellian thought. It's like you can go from being like, you are my loved family member. Oh, you have lost the lottery. My morality now completely changes. You are no longer family. Those ties no longer matter. You have been chosen, and you have been conscripted to be consumed by by whatever. And like those types of things there, like. Those are moral justifications that you hear only when you're living in an absolutist worldview, when like this is the only way. There is no everything is binary. There is no middle ground. Like we can easily tell that there is no place in the world for someone who has sexuality that's different from the majority, that they should be murdered and killed. Like, there's just no way around that. And so, like, that's a great story to basically bring that along. Yeah.
Other notable ones that they had on there was Coraline, which I honestly didn't know was a horror story. I mean, Tim Burton did an adaptation of that. Didn't know that. Now I kind of want to go check out that book. They also had they had Goosebumps on there, and I didn't think they were. I mean, back when I was a kid, they were scary, but nowadays I find them very unscary. Though I do like Goosebumps quite a bit.
They were decent. I remember a couple of them that had some pretty good.
Rosemary's Baby.
Yeah,
Rosemary's Baby. That was always and I never read the book either. I've only seen the movie. And then the last one that stuck out to me was the October Country Stories. And it's Ray Bradbury.
Yep, Fahrenheit 451, and other really important playwrights and stuff. He was more of a playwright than he was a writer, but yeah. Ray Bradbury is essential. I haven't gone through this short story collection personally.
I haven't either, but you know, I really want to. You know,
well, if it gets a call, like I've never seen anything Ray Bradbury put out that it wasn't worth at least taking a look at. Like 451 changed my ideas of what books were and how important they were. I mean, there's is Idris Elba, is he the firefighter in the new? There's a live action 451 coming out soon. I don't know if it's an HBO movie, but there's a live action.
There is
regular, like a full fledged. I don't know if it's to theater, but I'm pretty sure it might be to like an HBO or whatever. But there is a Fahrenheit 451 rendition coming out soon, and that looks awesome. He
also has, and this is weird, and it's a shout out to my wife, it's called The Halloween Tree, and it was a kids show or kids movie type thing growing up, and like it takes them on this whole journey. And I believe, what's his name? God, Spock. What's the guy that plays Spock? Leonard Nimoy. There you go. Narrated The Halloween Tree. And if you've never seen it, even though your kids are a little older, if you've never seen it, you should sit down and watch it this Halloween. Hell, if you all want to come up to the house, we'll just have a viewing for it, you know.
That'd be cool.
But we have, it's one of those things, I never knew about it as a kid. And then my wife introduced me to this and basically essentially said, you know, this is the most amazing thing I watched as a kid. I'm scrolling through this thing and I see Ray Bradbury. I'm like, holy crap, he did The Halloween Tree. Like I didn't, you know, he did 451 or Fahrenheit. I knew that, but I didn't know about these. And so now this is on my list of things that I need to go look through.
So this is the top 100 horror stories?
Favorite horror stories by people that submitted them.
Okay. Well, I have one addition that I'm sad to see was not included in this, and there is a book, Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. You probably recognize this because this is a Scholastic book. This had this like pen and ink style drawing in it. The one on the cover is like this guy with like a thing in his mouth, but there are multiple images throughout this book. Oh, there it is right there. That one there.
Okay.
Is this like ghost lady with the eye thing that was Scary Stories Treasury. Those books for the Scholastic Library thing were like the best things. Like the Goosebumps stuff was like, okay, I like horror stories. And then the people who really wanted to have their brains liquefied would go into that one. And I remember like we would read these in like the back and you like pick your favorite ones because there's like
well, that's how Stephen King got his
Chuck Palahniuk's 13 Ghost Stories, I think, or Ghost Stories. Yeah. His book, like that was the one that people were like fainting when they were reading in bookstores and stuff. That was
fainting.
That was good. Fainting.
Yeah.
Chuck Palahniuk's 13 Ghost Stories or Ghost Stories. Check that one out too. Yeah, put that one on your list. That one was so graphic in multiple occasions that it was just like you could feel your pulse increasing when you're reading it. It was good.
That's how I felt when I was reading the. The one Stephen King where the bushes were chasing. The
bushes were moving.
The bushes moving. The Shining. I'm sorry.
Oh, the Shining.
I was deployed. I'm trying to go to sleep.
And you're reading the maze.
Why are you reading Stephen King?
So I'm reading Stephen King, and it didn't work. And I remember sitting there, I'm like, holy Christ, the bushes. And I started visualizing, like, that'd be freaky. But then I just couldn't stop thinking about it, so I had to finish the book, and I stayed up till like 4 a.m. And then I got up at like 6, had to go do PT and eat chow, and I was just a dead man. But I got through the book that night. I didn't sleep well.
They have
PT having flashes of.
You're like, oh no, the girls are going to come down the hallway.
Yeah, that was a great book.
Grandma's in the tub or whatever that was.
Oh.
They have the sequel to that. Dr. Sleep is actually an amazing book.
Yes, I've read those.
They've been trying to make a movie of that, and nobody's been greenlighting it. They've been trying for years to do it, but like,
I kind of hope they don't.
No, that's the thing. Like,
that book was just really good.
I don't know if anybody could do that movie the same kind of quality that damn it, I can't remember his name. The director of Shining and 2001: Space Odyssey.
Stanley Kubrick. Yeah,
Kubrick. I don't think anybody could do just like the way he filmed that. Like, there are so many tiny little things that are in that movie.
He butchered the story is the problem though, and then that's what I'm more afraid of will happen for Dr. Sleep. So. Yeah.
Oh well.
So Boyce, do you like science?
Oh, definitely.
Do you? Hannah has a special science.
Yeah, this
that he would like to give you today. We try and do like a science segment almost every show.
Okay.
And it's been a lot harder recently just because the schedule with my work and what's happening at my work, and then Hannah is being sucked into his job to try and help maintain the business on a different front. And so he's working 80 hours a week. I'm working 60 hours a week, and we just haven't been able to sit down and do a super in-depth. We did do a science segment last week.
Yeah.
So he's like, Chris, I'm going to come back with a science segment this week.
Okay. Let's hear
the whole concept of this one is like, I know you've got some experience in manufacturing, and we kind of just bounce this around or whatever, but the whole idea is it's like super wear-resistant metal alloys. And so we talk about, when you're dealing with mechanical operations and processes, it's friction and wear and destruction and fatigue analysis and catastrophic failure are your most recent or most probable reasons for failure. And this new group of people at Sandia National Laboratories, they've created the most wear-resistant metal alloy. And the way they did it, the thing that they utilized to make wear resistance is pretty novel. And one of the examples that they give is that if you had a car with these metal tires and you could skid, you could not drive, you would just skid. So if you were moving and you stopped your brakes immediately, you skid, you would go around the Earth's equator 500 times before wearing out the surface of their tires. That's how wear resistant these materials are. And one of the things they talk about in here is that this is a gold-platinum alloy. And it's believed to be the most wear-resistant in the world, 100 times more durable than high-strength steel, which is something that I work with on a regular. It's like alloy steels, and there are super alloy steels. And trust me, super alloys, if you're trying to machine these things or do stuff with them, they destroy anything you put at them. Like, you have to have perfect tooling and setups for this kind of stuff. But what they've created is these are metals that are in the same class as diamond and sapphire, which are nature's most wear-resistant materials. So if you have a slab of diamond and a slab of sapphire, and you just slide and grind, a flat plate of steel on top of them, there's almost no friction. They just slide as low friction as possible. So there's no, like, if you imagine if you had sandpaper, just the drag. That's the essential experience of friction. Or if you have a flat plate with no lubrication, like how much the lubrication would make that plate slide further. Yeah. If you put it on a slant, that's how much friction overcome and all that kind of stuff. Well, anyways, this material is super wear resistant, and like when we talk about diamond and sapphire, we're talking about these are crystals. These are things that you can't just like spray onto a surface to be usable.
Naturally occurring.
Yeah. I mean, even the diamonds are not even required to be naturally occurring. Like, they make synthetic diamonds all the time with these super massive presses. But like this kind of material, and they said that diamond and sapphire are really good, but they didn't think they would ever be able to find something in the metal category that would be as wear resistant. And this is platinum and gold, and they said that this is a surprise. The combination between the two is it's not universal, or it's not new. This isn't unique, but the way in which they're doing it is. And so what they've done is the concept before that, like, what they use a lot of times is things like tungsten carbide, which has tiny little grains. So like metal has tiny little grains of sand. That's how it's composed, and the smaller the grain, the less likely it is to wear out, because the grains, the edges, the perimeters of the little bits of metal, those are what wear out and rust, and tungsten carbide has tiny ones. Well, when you get into even harder materials, it has even smaller ones. And so like these guys have created this stuff that is like it's super long lasting. And I don't know if Chris, in your environment or whatever, you deal with like rollers and stuff that's just like moving tracks and like bearings and stuff like that, or is it pretty much just forklifts and pallets and stuff?
In the plant that I work in, it's mainly pallets and forklifts. They are too cheap to invest in a production line for
like a nice roller assembly for moving things around. Yeah, but
in the other steel case plants, they do have those. You know, for example, they're in the Kentwood plant. I guess it's Kentwood West again. They made us drop the West because there was no longer an East plant, and now guess what? There's an East plant that came back. Anyway, so they have these where they're file drawers, and essentially they're a certain color and a certain make are built in Kentwood, Michigan. And what'll happen is they're moving rollers, and they literally, these things sit on rollers. They have sensors. They move here. They stop. You do what you got to do. Hit a button. It moves it on. It comes again, and everybody does a small portion of this assembly. But they do have, I mean, and these are expensive ass roller assemblies that they have.
And so the whole idea is they're probably using bearings on that. Like, Boyce,
yes.
What is like the I guess the most like bearing or lubricative or super high end like smooth surface wearing stuff that you've ever dealt with in the manufacturing that you had to deal with?
Well, when I worked at Bosch, they made some brakes, these hydraulic hydro boosts they're called, and so I can't remember exactly what they were. I didn't do the machining part there. I did the assembly, but they had such tight fittings that I can't remember the type of oil it was either, but only this one thin oil would work.
Super low viscosity type hydraulic oil or something.
But yeah, they had these bearings were so tiny. I mean, just you couldn't even pick them up with your finger.
Yeah.
Like, your fingers are too fat to pick them up. So it's just very, very minute little bearings that were inside the groove that they had to stay in the groove, and then you had to drop the seal around it and then put it into the housing, the boring hole. And if you made the slightest mistake, it would fail. And I mean, and they had a patent on it. That's why Bosch was so successful.
Yeah, they have tons
the Hydro Boost
that,
machining, I believe it was. It's all about those little grooves for lubricants. Mm-hmm. And because of wear and tear, of course.
So like when those types of things, so like what Chris described and what you described, essentially what you're running into is that you've got metal on metal. So in a standard ball bearing setup, you've got balls that are rolling. So you have an internal race that spins one direction and an external race that spins in the other direction. One clockwise, one counterclockwise. And the balls are rolling between those two. The contact points are usually at the outer diameters. And then you have taper bearings, they're basically rollers, and those contact the entire diameter of the roller, and those can handle even more wear. But what you have there is you have really hard materials, hard metals, and then often greases or oils or whatever. And when those things wear out, like as soon as any dust is created, you're creating sandpaper. Mm-hmm. And the greases that you have and the lubrication that you have, depending on what you have, if you have flowing lubrication that has a filter, you can get all that sand and dust out of there, and your lubrication stays really good. Well, in a lot of applications they're using now for stuff like push rods and things that are inside of motors that are seeing 10,000, 100,000, 200,000 cycles an hour. We're talking billions of cycles in a lifetime in a motor, something going in and out of a slide or a really tight slip-fitted hole. They use this stuff called diamond-like carbon. It's a class of amorphous carbon material that displays some typical properties of diamond, but it's in a coating that applies to other materials. And it basically comes in different forms, but these different forms have different coefficients of friction, and they're crystalline prototypes or polytypes they call them. So it's a coating that basically creates like a perfect carbon diamond-like coating, a graphite type coating. Super low coefficients of friction. The thicknesses we're talking in the microns, so 6 zeros and then numbers. And these types of things are really expensive. They're really useful, but they are not within their within their the realms of perfection or whatever. And so this new creation is this new metal alloy that they believe they can use for spraying. And it's the whole idea of what they're doing is that they've created this alloy with chrome or with platinum and gold. And the whole idea of this is basically dealing with thermal properties. So if you think about your brakes and what wears down in your brakes, you're not grinding the brakes apart. Like, it's not like a sanding process that wears your brakes down. The reason your brakes wear down is the transfer of heat. Yeah. So you have friction to friction, and you have to release heat somewhere. And heat is what damages the surface of your brake pads. That heat is what damages almost any surface coming into contact with any other surface. And that thermal breakdown is what the problem is. The traditional diamond-like carbon stuff and all of these other coatings is super small grains and everything on those. And that's the whole thing that they've done. Well, this new surface basically eliminates the whole problem with thermal properties. And so it doesn't get affected by the heat, but when it breaks down, when it starts to wear out, like this surface has to wear out eventually, what it creates is the diamond-like coating. So it creates almost a perfect graphite lubricant when it breaks down. And so what they're talking about using this for is for new electronics and things that we have that are super small, but they, like I said earlier, observe, 100,000, 200,000, a million, a trillion, a billion, or a trillion cycles. These things are rubbing. And these are the things that go bad in your electronics. So like a clicker, a contact point, something that's a small, tiny nano or micro contact that moves inside of an electronic chipset. This stuff will now last 2, 3, 4, 5 times as long. So your cell phones, your electronics, your computers will last longer because of this coating, potentially, if they can get it to the point where it's cheap. Like this is a major change in how long materials.
So
last.
I wonder if we'll see a discount in their pricing here.
But they got to bring it down. I mean, this is the really. It was either this discovery or they have created a new transistor that is one. So
I'm gonna think. How about this, Hannah? Right. So things will last longer.
Yeah.
So think about it this way: instead of my iPhone lasting 3 or 4 years, it could last 10 years. But what's the point when technology evolves so fast that you don't want something that old?
It's outdated.
Exactly.
Technology.
I mean, how often do you update your phone?
2 years.
Yeah. And I get that. I get that we're now being programmed to do that. I understand that. But at the exact same time, technology is advancing to such an extreme extent. Unless this is going to reduce the cost of this type of technology, Great. I'm glad it lasts longer. And you know what? Yeah, maybe some of that cheap Chinese crap that we buy will be able to last longer than a month. When we buy it. But at some point, you got to look at it this way. It's going to be surpassed before the exit of the life. So great. I love this discovery. I hope they use it for something other than electronics personally, because think about it this way. You bought a washing machine. Your parents probably bought one washing machine and one dryer when they got married, and they had it for 40 years and then replaced it. My parents still have their original
Maytag
washer. Yep, Maytag washer. I've gone through 2 washers, and I'm only 35.
Yeah. If you buy the old stuff, one of the things they used to do back in the day is there was a thing called a safety factor, and they didn't really have a good way to simulate how strong a project would be and like what it would take to break it. Now we can simulate that to know exactly what it takes to break that project or that component or whatever. So like in an engine, like a single component inside of an engine, we can guess within probably a million cycles, maybe 500,000 cycles, when that thing's going to break. And so they can tell you, like, in 6 years, this is more than likely going to fail. And that is something that they can simulate. And so they build these things with a 1.2% safety factor, which is 1.2 times as strong as it needs to be. Just a little bit stronger. It'll last a little bit longer. Back in the day, they used to build at 3-4 times safety factor. So everything was way stronger than it needed to be. But to counter your electronics thing is that just on the general assumption that everything is going to continue to be based on silicone and as it is now, what's to say that using these types of technologies won't make our computers, and once we get into quantum computing, just a component-based thing where you have a basic core, because quantum computing essentially is exponential. It really doesn't have an upper limit. So, I mean, we could look into something when we're talking about quantum computing or any of the new types of computing that aren't silicon-based. We may have a basic chipset, and you just update your hardware components or pieces in the future. I mean, there's a variety of things that it can come to, aside from just plain mechanical processes and driving.
And if our society wasn't built on capitalism and we were actually built on a more socialistic model, I would agree that that's actually the ideal state that we could be in. Because instead of us buying a bunch of junk and ruining the economy, I guess the environment, I'm sorry, more than the economy, and being
there's an incentive to be the first person who creates a forever phone.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's a
so
variety
I hope
of things
Apple does
that could,
because it would just kind of rub it in your face.
That could happen. I don't know if it would. I don't know what the limits of this technology are, but I mean, that is kind of the idea, right? To create a forever computer, a forever phone.
What's the forever price?
Yeah, I don't know. That's the thing. Like,
you know what the forever price is? It's going to be, hey, by the way, everything's, it's going to be, it's $1,000, and by the way, we want a $500 a year fee for
or
it.
It could be subscription based. I mean, there's a variety of things that it could be. Like these kind of new technologies, though. This is with this kind of paper, with this kind of writing, it says we've discovered this new thing. And so, like, it's kind of like when a new tech company goes to Silicon Valley and they have this amazing idea. They put that thing out there and they say, we have this great company. Here's what we got. But they don't go through an ethics analysis to see what the future of that thing could be. Could it be really bad? The same thing goes with this. Like, these guys have written a paper. They have proved that you can do this thing. We don't know the ramifications of it, but the fact that we have this kind of technology and to learn from it, maybe this super slick component could be what they use to make railguns, to make more effective weapons for murdering people.
When can we weaponize this?
You know what I mean? So, like, that's the thing. Like, it could be this technology could be something that creates a super gun that doesn't need gunpowder that can murder people from 1,000,000 miles away. I don't know. Like, there's all kinds of
when that happens, we're blaming you.
Yeah, that's because my name is on the paper, of course. But like those kinds of technologies, though, like, you know, like, I don't go straight to the doomsday scenario. I like to take the more optimistic end on that thing, and then I would just love to see things not be weaponized and maybe be useful for people. But
aren't you just an optimist?
I know. I didn't have this doomsday scenario for upbringing.
I'm the asshole in the group. He's typically the.
I didn't have this doomsday scenario thing that you guys did. We're like, we're all gonna die. Like, I didn't have that.
The only way to bring him to the point of being an angry person is to whistle into the mic.
Yeah.
If you actually go through back some of the podcasts,
if it gets bad enough, I turn my hearing aids off and then I just go wander on my own.
Every once in a while, I'll whistle a couple times in there.
That'll shut them up.
I can get my hearing aids, see if I can get squeal.
No.
Oh, you don't want to hear that?
No, I would prefer you not to do that while we're recording the show.
That might be the reason why whistling drives me insane, because the old hearing aids used to squeal enough to blow blood out the other side of your head. That was a sound that you wouldn't experience. Because the analog hearing aids just had no... These new digital ones, as soon as they start to squeal, they recognize that they're squealing and they turn themselves down.
Oh.
And so, like, the old ones, though, like, like the microphones you guys are on, like, if you put your face too close to it, it would just be like the sound. Or, like, put a guitar too close to an amplifier. That used to... both sides of my head towards my brain. So maybe that's my negative.
It's your kryptonite.
Yeah, it could be.
Well, as we wrap the show up, we had one more topic we wanted to go through. And I don't know how much introduction this needs. Manafort's defense team and where he's going and why Trump has remained silent. So, if you don't know who Paul Manafort is, you probably have not been reading the news very much.
You've been in that weird town in Michigan that won't let anybody but Christians in.
Yeah.
Bayview.
So he's on trial for fraud charges, essentially. Yep. There's probably more charges that could be lobbied against him, but right now he's on trial for fraud charges. And it's kind of, he's one of the people that's ranging around, that's from Trump's
early orbit. He was the campaign manager up until the primaries.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he essentially is now being put on trial. And again, we look at this and how many people from Trump's past have been put on trial. And I guess that doesn't indicate anything. But in fairness, how many other presidents have had former candidate or, cabinet members, former associates put on trial? Very few.
I think there's 32 indictments. And he's asked for 150 more subpoenas is the most recent numbers. Papadopoulos is the big one. But everybody else has pretty much made a deal. Manafort's the only one who's just buckled down on a Trump's going to pardon me. I don't care what anyone finds. I'm going to get my get out of jail free card. I really think he's buckling down on this because, his associate and basically his number 2 man, Star Trek number 2.
Yeah.
He's pretty much completely made a deal for a lesser sentencing. And so Brent Gates is that guy, and he basically spilled the beans on Manafort and essentially said that they did all kinds of illegal things. He himself did illegal things, and just on top of everything else that the government had basically put together in prosecution against Manafort. So what most of the people have been talking about was that Gates' testimony was just like, I did all of these bad things. Manafort told me to do bad things. I did bad things with Manafort. And then the Manafort cross examination basically said that they tried to make Gates look like a criminal and saying like he is the bad guy. Manafort was just unwitting. He didn't know that Gates was doing all these bad things with his finances. So this is all Gates' wrongdoing. And Manafort was a nice guy who accidentally sort of got caught up in this. That's their basic premise. And then after hundreds and hundreds and thousands of documents where Manafort was like, yeah, go ahead. These are my other accounts. This is where you should charge my suits, my ostrich jackets, and whatever else that he bought. that essentially, the whole of this case rests on the prosecution with all their paperwork and Brent Gates and other witnesses who said Manafort was without question guilty here. And then the defense is basically saying Brent Gates had an affair with his wife, so he's not a trustworthy guy. Yeah, so you shouldn't believe anything he says.
Exactly.
That's their defense.
It literally says, we could talk about the dollar amount in a second, but he's talking about embezzling millions of dollars, and Manafort's just like, well, I honestly didn't know he was giving me millions of dollars. Like, where the hell did your money come from? Yeah. How dumb are you that you could be, I mean, and if you get away with this, I'm sorry.
Well, if he was just sitting in his bank account, it'd be a different story, but this dude was living high on the
Let's think,
on the hog.
How rich are you?
Well, you don't even notice,
notice $20 million.
Yeah,
that's the real question. Like,
and I don't think he was that rich. Well, I mean, he'd been doing this for so many years. Yeah, I mean, this is not like a 5-year, 2-year scheme. I mean, this is like multiple decades.
He came to prominence with Reagan,
right?
And after essentially putting the Reagan, Hollywood guy in office, he pretty much went out in the world as a gun for hire, and he did all kinds of stuff throughout the world. The Ukraine stuff was where he really got in some creepy connections to these oligarchs, and I mean, Ukraine is where he had big problems. And then the other thing was just like the tax fraud stuff that he is being called up on is that he made tons and tons of money in Ukraine, and he didn't claim any of that income as for his taxes, and so he's essentially avoiding American taxes by having these false accounts throughout the world and in Ukraine. Well, that's the whole thing here. Is like you think about like Al Capone.
Yeah, I was about to say he's just Capone.
Yeah, it's the same thing. And then but did you see the Trump quote that he was saying that Manafort's the most tortured guy out there, like Alphonse Capone? Like, he didn't even say Al Capone. Trump said Alphonse Capone. What did he do? He killed people and he was a gangbanger. What did Manafort do? He just had some his tweet. He's just like, Manafort didn't do anything. He's been attacked so bad. Like, just like comparing him to Al Capone, which is like,
kill nobody.
Duh. They both went down with tax fraud. I mean, it's just Trump does things and you're just like, really? Did he really just do that? But yeah, no, Manafort, I really think he is holding true to, if he's found guilty, that he's either going to make a deal with Mueller, which is going to be a lesser deal than he could have if he would have started. But he is holding down the expectation that Trump is going to pardon him, because Trump in recent months pardoned a whole bunch of people, a couple of people that were guilty of like these weird weird tax things, like Arpaio. He got pardoned, and then he went on Sacha Baron Cohen and his new show and said that he would take a blowjob from Trump, which is a whole nother story.
Dude, that is so good.
Oh man!
Yeah, but anyways, we're not going to talk about that.
Yes. So, anyways, but like, Trump has been telegraphing with all of his pardons, because he went on a rampage for a while, just bang, 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 doing all kinds of people. And they said he was telegraphing a message to everyone who was on trial or who was being prosecuted that, listen, I got you back. You don't snitch on me, I'll pardon you. And we'll see if he does it. Because if Trump does it, dude, that's pretty.
He's a gangster.
There you go. So how about this, Boyce? Give us your take. Think about it this way. So Trump's holding out on his pardon. We have an article that basically talks about how he's just saying, Manafort's a good person, but he won't talk exactly about a pardon, right?
Mm-hmm.
On another article we have, the Ukraine is very afraid about their interaction with the United States, right? What could happen with the administration? My question is, and this is how it almost looks to me, is Trump's going to be silent, right? Because maybe our investment or our U.S. trade with the Ukraine is more important than dealing with Manafort, which either tells us one of two things. Manafort is never going to be in a position to put Trump in a bad position, right? He's not going to be able to release enough information to harm Trump per se, right?
Yeah.
Or there's a lot more at stake with the Ukraine than any of us realize. So what's your take on it?
I believe that Trump will pardon him. It's already an agreed a thing. I think the Ukraine thing, that's just shedding light on how much we really don't know about these how many presidents have closed door meetings? These little meetings are the things where these Ukraine deals get done, I believe, where the press is not allowed in. That's never happened. I believe that's illegal. Still, the press isn't allowed to witness all these deals being made at these Trump Tower.
Well, backdoor diplomacy has been a normal thing of years, but like people just didn't know what was happening. Now we know what's happening.
Yeah. Well, and that just, what I guess I have to look into, what does Ukraine have to offer us? That's what it comes down to. What are their mineral resources? What is their oil or whatever? I don't know, plutonium, whatever it could be. Something huge.
Well, they just the most recent thing that
huge things.
Yeah, the most recent thing that has been happening through Ukraine is Angela Merkel was just in Ukraine talking, or no, she wasn't in Ukraine. She was talking. She had a meeting with Putin, and they were talking about Ukraine and the oil pipeline they're building through that, because those oil pipelines are the main some of the main suppliers to the Euro oil industry. And so basically, what Putin is trying to do, they believe, is trying to consolidate oil transfer through Ukraine, or control those pipelines through Ukraine, because he would then have the upper hand to squeeze Europe and the European Union for what he wants. Essentially, everybody is just trying to find a strategic place, and Putin doesn't want to jump on a Crimea to create a worldwide scandal if there isn't something for him to gain. And then if he holds true and never gives up, and then eventually the United States is like, well, I kind of want to just end this whole hostility with Russia and just let Putin have Crimea. Because Trump doesn't either understand the significance of that land encroachment, or he fully understands it, and Putin told him, like, this is a big deal, and I'll help you out, you help me out. We don't know what that level is, but there's a bunch of strategy happening, and Merkel was just debating and fighting with Putin just recently over that, because that pipeline, that's kind of like if you look at the what are the transnational pipelines throughout through Canada and everything, like these huge pipelines that are just a big deal. Well, like, it's not so much of a big deal because the United States is relatively small, but if you imagine that was the only pipeline coming from the oil sands, like, this would be a big deal.
Yes.
And so, like, the Koch brothers would be like, let's burn this place down if we don't get what we want, because they're the owners of the tar sands. And, we're looking at these kinds of things. Like, Russia needs money. Their economic growth is pretty stifled. And so that Putin's doing whatever he can to build that country up, and taking the strong arm. He's betting the farm. He's betting the farm on that the U.S. won't retaliate and shut him down, because the U.S. could do sanctions that could strangle them, but they haven't been initiating them as intensely.
Well, who's to say Putin? Sorry, I got him confused. Who's to say that Putin's plan isn't to reinstate Ukraine as a republic, absorb them back into the Russian border
dictatorship,
border.
Authoritarian,
regain Soviet blocks.
Yeah, so he'll somehow get in control of the oil.
He would take it if he can get it.
Right.
I just don't know if he has enough power to get it.
With the oil, he has an upper hand in Ukraine and the other republics, that he could use this to jockey in another way of bringing people back into the fold, to have more say and more access to resources and more influence. And Trump could be a part of that equation to begin with.
That's an interesting perspective. I guess I never thought of it that way.
Because he used to have them.
That's true.
There's little old stepchildren he used to have. Now he's like, I want them back. That's LeBron James as far as I'm concerned. I want him back in the family, This money, in with the United States, and with this another way to manipulate us.
Former KGB and intelligence that Putin has, he's playing the long game.
Hell yeah.
Trump's playing the short game. Like, I would not question that there's a long game out there somewhere that Putin has, without question.
Well,
yep.
It's all about Russia now, right?
Well, next week's going to be probably the jury decision on this Manafort thing, and if that turns through, we'll know. Like, it's like if Mueller gets basically, he gets this guilty decision. I mean, this is going to change the whole dynamics of everything.
I know it'll be something. We'll have a whole different. I mean, we honestly have avoided a lot of Russia talk. Not Trump talk, but Russia talk. We've avoided a lot of it because there's so much inconsistency, so many things that we could have to deal with. You never know what that outcome can be. And it's kind of nice now that we might be starting to see decisions, and we might get to start seeing a future. The only thing I'm worried about is having to continue to listen to someone deny it over and over and over and over. It's like the Nixon era all over again.
That's
So
the Trump card.
when we cheers, do we have to say Nadrovia?
Not
What we have to say
Rovia.
for now?
That's Vadanya. I think that's Die Hard.
Well, thank you all for joining us for another Cellar Door Skeptics. We've had an amazing turn of events. Thank you, Boyce, for I almost butchered it here at the intro.
That'd have been a good one.
R that shows up in there. I don't know why.
Thank you, Boyce, so much for joining us tonight. We wish you luck on your new podcast. We will look forward to it, and once you get it up and running, hit us back, and we'll have you back on for something else.
And we'll share links and all that good stuff.
Good deal.
With that, Cellar Door Skeptics concludes episodes 140. You can support us on Patreon if you would like to for as little as $1 an episode. It's less than it costs you to buy an energy drink each week. For $1 per episode, you can support Cellar Door Skeptics and everything that we do. Thank you all so much. Have an amazing night, and we'll see you next week with another Cellar Door Skeptics.
Listening to a presentation of Cellar Door Skeptics. Check us out on Spreaker. CellarDoorSkeptics.com.